Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is about something we've all felt at some point. Being underestimated, overlooked, or pushed aside just because we don't fit the mold. But what if the quietest person in the office held the biggest secret of all? This is a story about just the quiet intern no one respected. They mocked her clothes, erased her work, and told her she didn't belong. But what they didn't know, she was married to the man about to own the entire company, and he was done watching in silence. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's begin. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing the marble-laced lobby of Meridian and Stone. It smelled of imported leather, bergamot cologne, and silent pressure. The walls shimmered in cream and gold, broken only by abstract art and award plaques in gilded frames. Nina Alvarez stepped in quietly, clutching her canvas tote to her side like armor. She wore a pressed white blouse and navy pants that didn't hug her figure the way the others' designer fits did. Her black flats had lost their shine, and her sleek ponytail, while neat, felt almost too humble under the vaulted glass ceiling. No one greeted her. No one ever did. She made her way across the floor, careful not to let her heels click too loud against the marble. The bullpen buzzed with laughter and the rapid clatter of keys. In a corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows, the so-called core crew leaned over a long table cluttered with oat milk lattes and sleek laptops. Blair Donovan, all cheekbones and attitude in a cropped cashmere blazer, was mid-anecdote. So I told him, if the bag doesn't come with a waiting list, it's probably not worth buying, she said, sipping from a blush pink cup. Her audience, mostly junior creatives and interns, giggled, their smiles sharp and calculated. Nina took her seat at a slim desk near the wall, beside the coat rack and a printer that sometimes coughed violently. She unpacked her laptop, then reached into her tote for her lunch, a clear plastic container of rice and roasted vegetables. She placed it gently on the desk, trying not to draw attention. She failed. From 2 rows down, Trent Holloway, the lead strategist with teeth like polished pearls and a jaw made for mockery, spotted her. "Look who's having a picnic again," he announced, nudging Blair with his elbow. "Should we clear space for a checkered blanket and ants?" A few chuckles rippled. Nina smiled politely and said nothing. "Must be a Midwest thing," Blair added, not even glancing her way. "Do they still churn butter out there too?" Laughter, this time louder. One of the interns, not even trying to hide it, whispered, "Do you think she owns anything over $50? Nina's fingers tightened on her plastic fork, but her face didn't change. Her posture didn't shift. She'd mastered the art of invisible resilience, like concrete beneath wallpaper. At noon, the team filed into the conference room for the daily brainstorm. Nina followed, notebook in hand. As she reached the doorway, Blair stopped just short. "Oh, sorry," she said sweetly, blocking the entrance. "Meeting's full. We'll loop you in after." "I thought I was supposed to be on this pitch," Nina said gently, her voice almost lost in the hallway din. "Yeah, but the client's high tier. They want edge, not earnest." Blair smiled like it was a compliment. "Besides, someone has to cover admin. You're great at that." The door shut in Nina's face with a soft click. She stood there for a full minute, hands still on her notebook, before turning away. Her eyes drifted to the large mirror in the hallway, the one where employees usually checked their makeup or adjusted their ties before client meetings. Nina looked at her own reflection, plain, clean, composed. And then she whispered under her breath, "Not today." But she stayed. She returned to her desk, pulled up the campaign brief, and kept working. While they brainstormed inside, she reworked 3 ad taglines and proofed the digital copy. No one would know it was hers. Not yet. But the words would glow on their presentations anyway. As the team spilled out of the conference room an hour later, laughing and full of self-congratulations, Nina simply smiled at her screen and kept typing. By Friday morning, the agency was in full performative swing. Sunlight flooded through floor-to-ceiling windows, bouncing off gold fixtures and white lacquered desks. Conversations rose in curated tones, half laughter, half brag. The espresso machine hissed and foamed like a backstage diva. People strutted past Nina's desk in heels that cost more than her monthly rent, trailing clouds of cologne and entitlement. She didn't look up. Nina was focused on editing a carousel post for a skincare brand. The copy had been rushed, full of typos, but she'd quietly tightened the phrasing, swapped weak transitions, and added 3 punchier taglines. Clean enough for any pitch deck. As she tapped her pen against her chin, a voice rang out behind her. "Oh, the intern's thinking again." It was Trent, of course. He leaned on her desk like it was a charity display. His shirt, crisp and pastel, hugged his frame with designer arrogance. Blair sauntered over next, her stiletto boots clicking sharply against the tile. "She edits like she's writing a letter to her grandma," Blair drawled. "Maybe she should include a recipe next time." Nina sat still. Her fingers rested lightly on the keyboard. She didn't answer. From across the room, a junior account exec named Ava whispered loud enough to be heard. "Do you think she even has social media? I bet she uses a flip phone." Laughter exploded. "Maybe a pager," Trent chimed in. Another intern, one Nina barely knew, tossed a granola bar onto her desk. "You forgot to bring your breadcrumbs for lunch, didn't you?" Slid and hit her mouse. She looked down at it, then back up at the sea of faces pretending they weren't looking. "That's enough." The voice cut through the room like a blade. Everyone turned. Jason Liu, a senior copywriter who rarely spoke unless necessary, stood near the pantry door, his brows drawn. "She hasn't said a word to you, and you're acting like it's comedy hour," he said. Blair gave a small laugh. "Relax. It's called team bonding." "Funny. I thought bullying was out of fashion," Jason replied dryly, then walked away. The tension held for a breath, then dissolved into awkward fidgeting. Blair rolled her eyes and returned to her seat like a queen brushing off a mild rainstorm. Nina tucked the granola bar gently into her drawer and resumed typing. At lunch, the bullpen emptied toward the rooftop patio, where catered sushi and mezcal cocktails waited. Nina stayed behind, unfolding a small container of stir-fried tofu and brown rice. A shadow crossed her desk. It was Clara, the receptionist, prim and proud with a headset like a crown. "Just so you know, upper management is eating with the clients today," Clara said sweetly. "You might want to keep your smells to a minimum." Nina blinked. "Excuse me, nothing personal. Just, the air's a shared space, you know?" She left before Nina could respond. Alone again, she took a bite, her fork scraping gently against the container's bottom. There was no anger in her face. Not yet, just silence. That same dense, breathing silence she'd worn like a coat since day one. Later that afternoon, the office gathered for a team moment, photos on the grand staircase to showcase company culture. Blair and Trent posed front and center, flanked by Ava and other execs in coordinated neutrals. Nina lingered near the printer, unsure if she was included. "Excuse me," said Marcus, the in-house photographer, checking his lens. "We're just doing core staff." "I'm an intern," Nina said evenly. "Right. So, you're not really part of the face of the brand," he replied with a tight smile. "We'll get the full team later. Maybe." She stepped back, behind a ficus. From her corner, she watched as Blair laughed for the camera. Sunglasses pushed to the top of her head like a movie star. Ava adjusted her cuff bracelet. Someone joked about filters. The photographer clicked away, and Nina just stood there, framed by greenery and silence, watching them shape an illusion they never let her touch. Monday arrived with rain, fat, cold drops streaking across the tall office windows like whispers of something brewing. Inside Meridian and Stone, however, the temperature was all dry confidence and curated perfection. As usual, Nina arrived first. She moved quietly through the bullpen, her flats squeaking faintly on the freshly mopped tiles. The walls were lined with glass and ambition. Every desk was a glowing shrine of screens and succulents. She dropped her umbrella into the drying bin, removed her coat, and sat down. She was halfway through revising a banner ad headline when she noticed the note. It was taped neatly to her monitor, typed in bold black Arial. Please stop microwaving poverty in the pantry. Some of us have taste. Nina's hand froze above her mouse. For a long, silent moment, she just stared at the paper. Heart calm, breath steady, but her jaw clenched. She peeled the note off, folded it once, then tucked it into her coat pocket. 10 minutes later, the bullpen came to life. The usual suspects arrived with wet umbrellas and dry sarcasm. Trent dropped a joke about the rain ruining suede. Blair complained about her driver being late. No one looked her way, but Clara did. From the reception desk, Clara offered Nina a smirk that said more than words. That afternoon, the office buzzed with tension. A client meeting had gone sideways, and everyone was scrambling to fix it before the VP caught wind. In the war room, Blair took center stage. "We need new taglines by 4. Something that feels exclusive but still authentic," she barked, pacing in her stilettos. No one dared to speak first. Nina, standing near the doorway, finally raised her voice. "What if we emphasize ritual? Make the product about personal ceremony. Something timeless." Heads turned. Blair's brows arched. "That's quaint," she said. "But we're not selling teacups, sweetheart." Chuckles drifted across the table. Trent snorted into his coffee. Nina didn't blink. "I've already written 3 variations. They're in the shared drive, under ceremonial angle." Blair blinked, suddenly unsure. She glanced at Jason, who had pulled the files up on his tablet. "These are actually solid," he muttered. "Better than the junk from yesterday." Blair smiled without warmth. "Noted," she said. "We'll polish them." Nina knew what that meant. Her work would be used. Her name wouldn't. By 6:30, most of the staff had trickled out, off to rooftop drinks or indoor hot yoga or whatever expensive coping mechanisms they preferred. Nina stayed behind, hunched over her keyboard. Jason passed by, paused, and leaned on her cubicle wall. "Hey," he said softly. "That ceremonial angle? That was good." Nina looked up. "Thanks. You're not gonna get credit, you know?" She smiled faintly. "I'm used to it." Jason frowned. "You shouldn't have to be." They stood in silence for a beat. Then he added, "I wouldn't microwave anything tomorrow, just in case." Nina nodded slowly. "Yeah, I figured." That night, in her small studio apartment above a noodle shop in River West, Nina sat at her kitchen table. Her laptop glowed in front of her, open to a message thread. At the top, a name blinked. Liam Carter. A message sat unread. "You okay? Haven't heard from you since Thursday. Want me to fly in?" Nina stared at it for a moment, fingers hovering over the keys. Then she typed, "I'm fine. Don't come. Not yet." She paused, then added, "I'll let you know when I'm ready." She didn't press send right away, but she would. Soon. Thursday came dressed in sunlight, but inside Meridian and Stone, the air was glass. Clear, sharp, and waiting to shatter. Nina stepped into the bullpen just before 8 a.m., early as always. She wore a soft gray turtleneck and black slacks. Modest, ironed, professional. Her hair was braided down one side, a subtle shift from her usual ponytail. It didn't matter. Not to them. She barely made it past the reception desk before Clara called out. "Hey, Nina," she said with a sugary tone. "The facilities team needs help rearranging boxes in the back room. Guess someone thought you were part of logistics." A few passing interns giggled. One whispered, "Is she moonlighting as janitorial now?" Nina didn't stop walking. "Tell them I'm in a strategy meeting," she replied flatly, never breaking stride. Clara blinked, not used to pushback. By mid-morning, the real storm hit. The company's main client, Velour and Vine, was due to review the rebranded campaign. Everyone prepped feverishly, suits ironed and smiles rehearsed. In the conference room, Blair stood before the large screen, perfect in a navy silk blouse and diamond stud earrings. The presentation was sleek, the messaging flawless. Too flawless. Nina sat quietly at the back, a ghost in a seat. When Blair clicked to the final slide, Nina saw the headline she had written. "Own the ritual. Taste the legacy." Every word was hers. Blair cleared her throat. Our team really pushed for timeless over trendy. It was a group effort, but I led the narrative development closely. Lies. But no one questioned her. The clients clapped. Jason looked down. Trent smirked. Ava mouthed, nailed it across the table. Nina didn't say a word. Her silence wasn't defeat, it was fuel. After the meeting, as the team filed out and Blair basked in praise, Jason fell into step beside her. "You should say something," he murmured. "I will," Nina said calmly, slipping her notebook into her bag. "But not to them." Later that evening, the office dimmed with the sun. Nina remained the last soul on the floor. She opened her laptop and logged into her private messaging app, encrypted and firewalled. The contact Liam Carter lit up green. "Nina, can you fly in tomorrow?" "Liam, I'll take the 9 o'clock. Do you want me to bring anything?" "Nina, just yourself. And maybe a good suit." There was a pause. Then, "Liam, someone hurt you?" Nina hesitated, then typed, "Not just me. But yeah, it's time." "Liam, got it." She closed the laptop slowly, her reflection staring back at her from the dark screen. A quiet storm had begun inside her. Not loud, not wild, but focused, controlled, inevitable. The next morning dawned golden and cold. The kind of Chicago morning that made the air feel like glass. Sharp, honest, impossible to ignore. Nina stood outside the lobby of Meridian and Stone, her coat buttoned up to the collar, her breath fogging softly in the air. The sunlight caught on the glass tower, turning the building into a mirror that reflected everything except truth. And then the town car arrived. It was matte black, sleek and unbranded, the kind of car you only noticed if you understood power. The back door opened with a soft hydraulic sigh, and Liam Carter stepped out. He wore a charcoal suit, understated and precise. His dark brown hair was slightly tousled by the wind, his eyes hidden behind designer sunglasses. But Nina didn't need to see them. She knew exactly what lived in his gaze. Purpose and memory. They didn't hug, didn't smile. They just nodded. Two people who had already said everything that needed to be said. Inside the office, Blair was leading another team session near the glass atrium. "Listen, if the client doesn't see you in the product, then you're not selling. They buy us first, then the brand." The interns nodded, jotting down every word like gospel. That's when the elevator dinged. Heads turned, and the room fell silent. Liam Carter stepped out alone, adjusting his cufflink with an unhurried grace. The receptionist stood frozen. A junior executive dropped his pen. Clara, halfway through a phone call, whispered, "Oh my God," into the receiver. Trent squinted. "Wait, is that?" "Liam Carter," Jason finished, standing slowly from his desk. "CEO of Etherwave, tech billionaire, Forbes cover. Also," his voice lowered, "majority stakeholder in our new parent company." The silence cracked. Blair straightened, her voice suddenly brittle. "He must be here to meet the executive board." "We weren't told." But Liam didn't turn toward the boardroom. He turned toward Nina. She stepped off the elevator behind him, her posture easy, her expression unreadable. For the first time since joining, the floor opened for her. People parted like curtains in a theater they didn't know they were in. Liam stopped beside her desk. "This is where you sit?" She nodded. He scanned the modest cubicle, the thrift store lunchbox, the outdated monitor. "Not anymore," he said, his voice low but ringing. "You've earned something better." He turned to face the room. "I'm here because I've reviewed the internal behavior reports, the campaign files, and the staff evaluation metrics." He reached into his inner coat pocket and pulled out a single folded paper. "Someone left this note on my wife's computer." Gasps cracked through the room. "Wife?" Blair turned pale. Trent took a step back. Clara dropped her clipboard. Liam read aloud. "Please stop microwaving poverty in the pantry. Some of us have taste." The words echoed. "I own the controlling share in this company," he continued, still calm. "Which means I own this room. I own these walls. And I will no longer tolerate a culture that confuses cruelty with strength. He paused. Starting now, every individual associated with this behavior, through words, actions, or silence, will be reviewed. Your names will be cross-checked. If you're on the list, you're done here. Not just at Meridian and Stone, but anywhere my name has reach. He looked at Blair. We'll start with the campaign leads who took credit for work they didn't write. Blair tried to speak, but no sound came. Trent opened his mouth to defend himself, but Jason cut him off. You deserve this, he said quietly. And then the office exploded, emotionally, not literally. Phones buzzed. Emails chimed. HR called. And Liam stood calmly in the center of it all, hand gently resting on Nina's shoulder like a seal of absolute authority. Outside, the clouds began to roll in, but inside the bullpen, the glass finally cracked, and behind it, truth poured through like light. The fallout hit like a silent wave. Not loud, not chaotic, just precise, like a scalpel in the hands of someone who knew exactly where to cut. By noon, 3 employees had been escorted from the building. Clara was the first. She left quietly, her headset still hanging from one ear. Then came Ava, her designer tote packed in under 4 minutes by HR. Trent was third, half defiant, half stunned, his Tom Ford jacket slung over one shoulder like it might still save him. Blair? She wasn't escorted out. She was summoned. Liam had requested a private meeting in the executive conference room. Just him, Nina, HR, and Blair. When she entered, her composure was still intact. Hair perfect, chin high, but the room was made of glass. Everyone in the bullpen watched. Nina sat at the head of the table, calm, pen in hand. Her posture was immaculate. Her eyes were unreadable. Liam remained standing. Let's be clear, he began. We're not discussing your future. That decision's made. We're discussing your exit. Blair tried to smile. You think you can just rewrite the hierarchy here because you're what? Her boyfriend. I'm her husband, Liam said. And you're suspended pending a full ethics review. You don't understand how this office works. Blair snapped, her voice rising. It's all about presence. About control. No, Nina said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was cool, even. It's about accountability. And yours has finally caught up. Outside the room, no one spoke. The bullpen stood frozen, watching, learning. By the time Blair exited, her face was drained of color. She didn't speak, didn't glare, just walked past the people who used to echo her cruelty, none of whom would meet her eyes now. Her designer heels clicked all the way to the elevator. Then silence. By 3 p.m., the entire agency had shifted. A memo went out company-wide. Effective immediately, Meridian and Stone is under full cultural audit. All creative credit will be reevaluated. All intern to executive communications will be reviewed. Harassment reporting lines are now anonymous and protected by third-party compliance. A second memo followed, with a photo. Nina, seated at her new desk. Nameplate, Nina Alvarez, Senior Editorial Strategist. Underneath, in bold letters, talent is not a matter of origin. It's a matter of voice. And this one finally gets to speak. Around 5:15, Jason approached her desk, holding a small white box. I never said thanks, he mumbled, for staying quiet when it would have been easy to scream, for doing the work when no one gave you credit. Nina opened the box. Inside was a single fountain pen, sleek, black, engraved with her initials. I figured if you're going to be writing the next era, he added, you should have something better than a company-issued ballpoint. She smiled softly. Thank you, Jason. He nodded, then stepped away, giving her space, respectfully. Finally, that evening, Liam stood beside her desk, his hand in his coat pocket. You ready? He asked. Nina looked around the bullpen, the same space that once made her feel invisible. Now it was just a room, just a place. She stood, gathered her things, and slid the lunchbox gently into her bag. Yeah, she said. I've already started rewriting everything. They left together, the glass doors reflecting a woman they finally saw, and a man who never stopped seeing her. By Monday, the entire energy of Meridian and Stone had changed. The dress code hadn't. The espresso still hissed. The walls still gleamed. But the silence around Nina, that was gone. Now people noticed her, not out of obligation but awareness, respect, maybe even guilt. She didn't revel in it. She observed it. From her new glass-walled office, formerly the creative lounge, Nina worked with the same precision as always. But her presence now carried weight, not just whispers. That morning, a new protocol took effect. A company-wide reflection initiative. Every employee involved in harassment cases from the last 2 years was required to write a handwritten letter of apology. If not by policy, then by survival. The first one arrived before noon. It was from Clara. "Nina, I mistook silence for weakness. I'm sorry I added noise instead of value." Clara. Then came Ava. Then Trent. Their words arrived in various shapes. Folded papers, thick cards, branded envelopes. Some were rushed, some ashamed. But all of them, in their own ways, marked a shift. By 3 p.m., Nina's desk had a small stack of letters beside her laptop. She hadn't responded to any of them. She just read them once, then placed them in a drawer. That afternoon, Jason knocked lightly on her office door. "Got a second?" "Always," Nina said. He stepped in, holding a document. "They want you to sign off on the new intern onboarding protocol." She flipped through it. A page stood out, language about respect-first cultures and zero-tolerance verticals. "Looks good," she said, but her pen hovered above the signature line. Jason tilted his head. "What's wrong?" She set the pen down. "It's performative if it isn't enforced." He smiled. "Then maybe you should enforce it." She raised an eyebrow. "You think I'd be any good at that?" "I think you already are." She paused, then signed. Near the end of the day, a surprising visitor arrived. Marcus, the photographer. He stood awkwardly at her doorway, holding a frame. It was the group photo taken 2 weeks ago, the one she had been told to step away from. But now there was a second photo underneath. She pulled it from the envelope. It was just her, standing outside the building, holding her lunchbox. Wind in her braid, sun in her eyes. No pose, no polish, just presence. "Someone sent me the security footage," Marcus said quietly. "I thought maybe this was the real face of the brand." Nina blinked. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded, then slipped away. She hung the photo behind her desk. No title, just truth. As the day closed, Nina packed her things. Her new assistant, a former intern named Chloe, waited by the elevator. "You're heading out?" Chloe asked. Nina nodded. "They say you changed everything," Chloe added. Nina smiled faintly. "I didn't change everything." She paused, adjusting her coat. "I just refused to stay quiet." The elevator doors opened. As they stepped inside, Chloe whispered, "We're all really glad you didn't." A week later, the office buzzed with a kind of hush, the kind reserved for days when something important was about to happen. No one knew what, but everyone felt it. Nina arrived just past 8:30, dressed in a navy midi dress and ankle boots. Her hair was pinned back loosely. She carried the same canvas tote, the same lunchbox, the same quiet confidence. But now she walked through the bullpen like she belonged because she did. She stopped by the coffee machine, and for the first time, someone else offered her a cup. Jason, already pouring his second espresso, glanced over. "You want in?" Nina smiled. "Black, no sugar." "Like a true strategist," he said, and handed it over without comment. No one laughed at her lunch that day. No one whispered when she passed. Not because they feared her, but because they'd finally seen her. At 11 a.m., Liam arrived. He wasn't in a suit this time, just a clean black sweater and slacks, sleeves rolled, phone tucked away. He stepped into her office like someone coming home. "You look different," he said, eyeing the framed photo on her wall. "You mean like someone with a title?" she teased. "No," he said, moving closer, "like someone who doesn't need one." They sat across from each other, The city skyline stretched behind them like a promise. "You're really staying then?" Liam asked. Nina nodded slowly. "Not forever, but long enough to make sure no one else here ever feels the way I did." He smiled. "You're more patient than me." She tilted her head. "You always said change happens in two ways. From the top, or from the inside. And you've always been the inside," he said softly. She didn't respond right away. She just looked around. At the desk, the team, the atmosphere reshaped by something quieter than a protest, sharper than a scream. Integrity. That was her revolution. By 4 p.m., Chloe stepped into her office, holding a small white envelope. "They're asking if you'd like to close the company town hall today," she said. Nina raised an eyebrow. "What am I supposed to say?" "Whatever you want," Chloe shrugged. "You earned that." In the main conference hall, every department filled the tiered seats. Lights dimmed slightly. A hush fell as Nina took the stage. She wore no mic. She didn't need one. "Most of you know my name now," she began, voice steady. "But you didn't for a long time." Pause. "I came here as an intern. I watched people measure others by handbags, by accents, by who they followed on social media. I stayed quiet. I watched it happen to others. And for a while, I thought maybe I didn't belong." She looked out across the crowd. "But I did. I just hadn't decided how loudly yet." Another pause. "Everyone in this room has two choices, every day. Be the person who speaks, or be the person who lets silence do the harm." She let that linger, then added gently, "Let's not confuse silence with strength again." A beat of stillness, then applause. Real, full, honest. That evening, Nina and Liam left the building together. Outside, the wind had picked up. The city lights shimmered in the puddles from last night's rain. "You know," Liam said, holding her hand, "some people rise with a roar, and others," Nina said, eyes on the skyline, "with a whisper that never dies." They walked toward the car, side by side, as behind them, the building that once silenced her glowed quietly in the night. Changed. Forever. Months passed. The whispers faded, and with them, the fear that once haunted the corners of Meridian and Stone. Under Nina's leadership, the agency quietly became something new. Not louder, not flashier, just better. The bullpen still gleamed, the suits still strutted, and the espresso still steamed. But now, ideas flowed freely, and credit landed where it belonged. The interns weren't props. The quiet voices weren't ignored. Meetings welcomed the overlooked. Laughter came from places without cruelty behind it. No one talked about what happened anymore, but everyone remembered it. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was true. Nina never sought recognition. She declined interviews, skipped the press releases, and politely turned down a full-page feature in Incorporated magazine. Because for her, victory had never been about headlines. It was about a girl from a modest town who walked into a fortress of glass and never let it change the shape of her soul. It was about resilience and integrity, and the kind of quiet strength that outlives every designer label and executive title. Every morning, she still packed her lunch in that same old container. Every night, she still walked home with Liam, not needing to say much, because they already understood everything. And sometimes on her office wall, sunlight would catch the edge of that framed photo, the one Marcus had taken before anyone had realized who she really was. And anyone passing by would stop, look at her, and understand exactly why they now had a place where voices like hers no longer had to whisper. They had space to rise. Before we close, let's take a moment to pray. May we all be protected from arrogance and misjudgment, and may we all be protected from harm and injustice in our daily lives. May this story inspire us to treat others with empathy, no matter what they look like or where they come from. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more meaningful stories. Let us know in the comments. Have you ever surprised someone with your hidden strength? We'd love to hear your story. Thank you for listening, and remember, the strongest people often look like the quietest ones. Until next time, stay strong, stay humble, and stay true.